Welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. Coming up a little later in the program, our Julian Resendez, El Paso correspondent, is going to bring in a special guest, Assistant Director for Global Migration of the Hope Border Institute, Jesus de la Torre, to talk about the things that his organization is doing to help migrants along the border out towards El Paso. But first, we have some headlines we'd like to tell you about, starting with Florida getting ready to build a second immigration detention center. Now, this is video from the first one. It was already awarded at least one contract, though, for the second facility for what's labeled in state records as the, quote, North Detention Facility. Now, this site would add to the capacity at the state's first detention facility, again, that one that they've dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, which was built at an isolated airfield in the Florida Everglades. Now, Florida plans to build the second detention center at a Florida National Guard training center called Camp Blanding, very similar to what we're hearing about several other camps, including out towards El Paso and the El Paso, New Mexico border, or Texas-New Mexico border, and I think there was one in Indiana we told you about earlier or late last month as well. Governor Ron DeSantis has said the state is waiting for federal officials to ramp up deportations from the South Florida facility before they start building out the second site just outside of Jacksonville. In other news, police are using AI to reach the Spanish-speaking community. A Northern California police chief is using AI to translate his voice so the city's Spanish-speaking community can understand his message. Take a listen.
Hola, mi nombre es Paul Joseph, jefe de policía del Departamento de Policía de San José. Quiero que nuestra comunidad inmigrante me escuche directamente.
Very interesting stuff right there. Now, that is San Jose Police Chief's voice speaking Spanish, but it's not really him. The San Jose Police Department used AI software to convert Chief Paul Joseph's voice into Spanish. The software had been fed hours of him speaking in English. And in the translated video, the chief says San Jose police do not enforce federal immigration laws. He says officers won't ask about a person's immigration status either. The AI message comes at a time when federal immigration enforcement has left many migrants and Spanish speakers unsure of where they stand with law enforcement. The chief told our reporters, our partners at KRON, that he believes they have community members that are afraid to report crimes because of concerns over immigration. Also happening, prosecutors in the U.S. are not going to seek the death penalty in their cases against Mexican drug lords Ismael El Mayo Zambada and Rafael Caro Quintero. Federal prosecutors announced the decision in brief letters to judges on Tuesday. Caro Quintero and Zambada have pleaded not guilty to an array of drug trafficking charges. It is unclear whether taking the death penalty off the table signals any possibility of a plea deal with either or both men. Prosecutors declined to comment on that. Their lawyers welcomed the decision, but were cautious about what is going to happen next. The cases are being held in the same Brooklyn federal courthouse where the infamous Sinaloa cartel co-founder Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was tried and convicted. And I wanted to bring our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendez in for this because Julian, you've been you're often on those or watching and listening to those press conferences that the Mexican president holds. What did she have to say about this topic?
Rudy, that's right. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum this morning addressed the issue when she was asked by reporters. And she was a little bit ambiguous about her answer. On the one hand, she said that the treaties between Mexico and the U.S. Kind of forbid the death penalty because Mexico does not have a death penalty. So whenever they send someone to the U.S., it's got to be under those conditions. On the other hand, she said that she didn't know the particulars of this negotiation, that the Mexican government is not involved, that it doesn't know what is going on between the prosecutors and the accused drug lords. Now, let me give you some background on the importance of these drug lords. One of them, Caro Quintero, he's accused of the murder of DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena 40 years ago. And that really put Mexican drug trafficking in the eye of the storm and the public eye in the U.S. So his prosecution has always been paramount for the U.S. The other one, Mayo Zambada, is one of the leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, which is the main exporter of fentanyl to the U.S. There was a third subject that wasn't mentioned, but that was former Juarez cartel leader Vicente Carrillo Fuentes. The government also said that they will not seek the death penalty against Carrillo.
Now, do you think that they're trying to use taking the death penalty off the table for a better negotiation into a plea deal, or is it them just honoring that bilateral agreement with the country of Mexico?
I think the shadow is that definitely there is a deal under the works on the U.S. side. And also, it was pretty clear that when President Sheinbaum agreed it wasn't an extradition, it was an expulsion. When she expelled those Mexican citizens from her country, I think there was it was written in between the lines, okay, the extradition rules apply. We won't send them to you so you can execute them. But we don't know because initially the U.S. Attorney General appeared to indicate that they were going to seek the death penalty against these people.
Now, is there any chance that they could pit all these people against each other, or are their cases so separate that it may not really make a difference for any of them?
Well, the cases are separate as far as the individual facts, but the common denominator is these are big time Mexican drug traffickers who were able to at several levels corrupt the Mexican government, and obviously that's information that would be useful not only to prosecutors but to the Trump administration and future presidential administrations as they deal with Mexico and the drug trafficking issue.
Yeah, there's already been talk, I know, from the Trump administration in the past about labeling these cartels as designated terrorist organizations, which would open up all kinds of funding and different operations that could take place. That seems more like some more ammo that could help the Trump administration maybe advance that goal of theirs a little further.
Definitely, Rudy. The Trump administration has been very, very aggressive against the cartels, sometimes bringing into question just how deep they're willing to go as far as pressure in Mexico.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Julian. Julian, stick around because when we come back, you have a very special guest. Jesus de la Torre, Assistant Director of Global Migration for the Hope Border Institute, is going to be joining us to talk about what they're doing over on your side of the border. And please stay with us at home, too. You're watching Border Report Live. We're back in 1 minute. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. Joining me now, we have our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendez, and also our guest today, Jesus de la Torre, Assistant Director of Global Migration for the Hope Border Institute. How are you doing, sir?
Good afternoon, good morning. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Now, Julian, I know you had some questions for Jesus. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, Rudy. First of all, let me complete the introduction of my guest. Jesus de la Torre works for the Hope Border Institute. That's a group operating here in El Paso with affiliation to the local Catholic diocese. Now, what I can tell you about the Hope Border Institute is that I know that they do work on both sides of the border. And I've always said that for people to get a complete image of what's going on in the border, what's going to eventually affect the entire United States, you need to cover both sides of the border. So Jesus here, the organization, I know it's very active both in El Paso as well as in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, right across the border. Jesus, can you, the one thing I really wanted to ask you is what are you seeing right now as far as all those asylum seekers that previously were able to come across the border and plead their case and now are either stuck in a U.S. court or stuck in Juarez, sometimes in very precarious situations? What can you tell us about what's going on with the migrants?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Julian, again for the invitation. Two clear things. The first one in Ciudad Juarez, the people that are not crossing the border because there is no access to asylum are still in danger. Many of them have been kidnapped. Many of them are still facing increasing needs, like they need to access housing, they need to access some documentation, they need to bring their kids to school, to find a job. They are still in some very challenging situations. Some of them have suffered violence in Mexico. Some of them are even internally displaced Mexicans who cannot leave their country right now. They cannot seek asylum in the US. And therefore, some of them are afraid. They are not leaving their homes. Some of them are moving to some more temporary homes, renting apartments, and living shelters. Some others are staying in shelters. But that's on the Mexico side. On the El Paso side, we have seen families going to court and one of their relatives being detained. When they show up for the court appointment, they are following the law. They are following exactly what the US government told them to do. We have seen moms pregnant who have been detained on the other side of the country. They have been flown to El Paso despite being pregnant, and they have been eventually deported, separated from their kids. Their two kids were left behind in the case of a mom that we accompanied. And we continue to see the devastation of enforcement-only approaches that provide no solutions for the people who've been in the US for a very long time, contributing to the economy and the communities and our faith communities, and then suffering the broken immigration system that is long due to be fixed.
All right, so that's as far as the problem. That's as far as what migrants are facing. Now, let me ask you this, Jesus. What is the organization Hope Border Institute doing in both instances? I know that in Juarez, very recently, just a couple of days ago, you guys provided some supplies, some food supplies for migrant families, up to 110 migrant families, I believe.
So we're trying to respond to the needs together with our partners in Ciudad Juarez, with Derechos Humanos Integrales en Acción. We did a program to provide food for some of the families that are in apartments and don't have access to certain items in their daily basket when they go to the grocery shopping. 110 families joined the program. They access some services, also some orientation, and then they were able to go to the supermarket to buy whatever they needed. And we were able to do this in coordination with our partners in Juarez, and thanks to private support donations that keep the life going in some of these places and for some of these people. We reach eventually almost 500 people, and we know this is a tiny contribution, and the needs are still growing despite the fact that we don't see them most of the time.
What about El Paso? What do you guys do for migrants here in El Paso?
In El Paso, many of the times we are contacted by other organizations, by other congregations across the country, letting us know that someone is detained in El Paso, that someone needs attention, to be connected with legal service providers. We have Estrella El Paso, we have Las Americas working tirelessly to try to represent these people. So we connect them to legal service providers, we accompany the families, and of course, we are also trying to provide pastoral accompaniment for our communities, for our migrant communities in El Paso. El Paso is a migrant city. 80 or almost 90% of the people are a Hispanic population. Most of them came from Mexico. And we are working to accompany them, to support them, and to try to bring our community together to ensure that everyone is safe and everyone feels that they can thrive in the community.
Yeah, certainly the images we're seeing on television right now show us the precarious situation, the need for assistance that the migrants who are stuck on the border definitely need. But let me ask you something that I think a lot of people want to know, and you'd be in a good position to answer. No, the Biden administration slowed down, pretty much closed the border between ports of entry to asylum seekers back in June of last year. And then President Trump followed it up with even stronger measures that include now these national defense areas with soldiers. Now, my question to you is, despite all this, is there still a need for people to come and seek asylum, to come and seek some sort of relief in the United States? We know that a lot of them were driven from Venezuela by the alleged government corruption. A lot of them were driven from Haiti due to the gang fighting. And of course, like we said, many from southern Mexico, western Mexico, are coming here because their communities are being literally taken over by drug cartels. So my question to you is has the situation improved or has the situation gotten worse? What is the alternative right now for anybody who wants to seek asylum?
Yeah, we're working with our partners in Central America, and we can tell you that the root causes of why people had to flee in the first place haven't changed. And in some cases, they have got even worse. The situation in Haiti, as you said, is getting even worse. People are still fleeing gang persecution in Honduras, government repression in El Salvador with this new regime, cartel violence in Mexico. And those, for some of those people, the cases that we hear, they are very clear cases of asylum. they will qualify easily for asylum if they were given a chance to present their claim. And what we need definitely is a system that allows them to do that in a safe way, in an orderly way for them and for people processing them at ports of entry. And we know that it's feasible. We only need some of the resources to do that and some of the political willingness to allow people to exercise in the end their human rights, which is to seek asylum. And then the state can hear those claims and determine if they are valid or not. But we definitely believe that many of these people will qualify for asylum. And what we are doing to them is shutting the door to the most vulnerable people in front of us.
One final question, Jesus, and that is the people, the families that you see in Juarez and maybe in other Mexican cities that border the United States. Do you see these people staying there, or do you see them going back to their country?
Well, it depends on the risk assessment of these families. We have seen families who move within Mexico. They want to find some jobs, and they perhaps move to economic poles like the city of Mexico, the capital, Monterrey. Some of the people are staying in the northern border. They are trying to find jobs there, or they are trying to find some safety. Some of the people are seeking asylum in Mexico. We have had around 36,000 asylum applications in Mexico over the first 5 months of the year, and that's similar to last year. So some people are still pursuing some safety there, and eventually some people are deciding to go back to their countries, even if they face the persecution they fled from in the first place.
Jesus, I also have a question. I think it was last week, the border czar for the Trump administration, Tom Homan, said something along the lines about 70% or more of asylum seekers, when they get here, their asylum claims are denied because they're not true asylum seekers. You mentioned that you think a lot of these folks that you're seeing come through. What percentage do you see, with true asylum claims that, should be making it past that hurdle here in the United States?
Yeah, like more than 50, 60, 70, 80. Like it truly, like, depending on the asylum officer that you could get, you could qualify. Why? Because, for example, people in Venezuela, they are fleeing very poor economic conditions, but at the same time, many of them are fleeing violence, and they are fleeing death threats. The case of a mom, for example, who fled with her 4 children because one of them had suffered death threats. Well, you could claim that she was trying to provide for her children, of course, but at the same time, she was trying to put one of her children at safety and all her family at safety. So people like her and her family will easily qualify for asylum. They could have a strong claim because they have been targeted, they've been persecuted because the child didn't want to run again or for whatever other reason. And like those cases, we hear many others. People who are trying to find better opportunities for sure, but at the same time, they are fleeing persecution or very dangerous situations. And if they wouldn't qualify for asylum, they could qualify for another protection recognized in the international law and the asylum law.
And that brings up another question you just mentioned there, the legal side of it. Someone has to help these migrants, apply for asylum. What does the legal assistance that your organization provide? What does that entail for these folks?
Well, we don't provide direct legal assistance. We don't have that capacity, but thankfully we have very good service providers in the community. Very recently with the Diocese of El Paso and Bishop Mark Sides, we provided a small grant to Estrella El Paso to provide representation or know your rights, at least to some folks. All those programs have been sunsetted. People basically in detention don't have access to any information of their rights if they are not given it by the agents. And those programs have proven to be a lifeline for many people, essentially to know what the rights are and how they can exercise them, and basically how they can pose their claims. So that's how we are trying to support the community. And there is always an increasing need for legal aid, and especially in border communities where more and more people will be sent to detention centers here.
I know the Catholic Charities here in the Rio Grande Valley, they've said, Sister Norma Pimentel has said recently, their numbers have just dropped tremendously on helping folks on this side of the border. As far as helping folks that make it to the U.S. side, have you also seen numbers drop, or have they remained steady?
Well, numbers are almost close to zero, especially because of this policy of not releasing anyone from detention. Even when it's proven that they are not a safety risk. They are not going to flee. They are going to show up to their court. People are not being released. And therefore, we don't see people being released into the shelters. As you know, the system at the border is coordinated with Border Patrol. So everyone dropped at the shelters or taken to the shelters were first processed by Border Patrol. And we don't see that anymore. Our shelters are mostly empty, or there are a few people who remain because they need intensive medical assistance, or who were released in very, very like tight grounds. But the situation in El Paso, for example, many of the shelters have closed, and now they're volunteers, many of them from the faith community. They are doing other activities like praying for the migrants, calling them, calling their families, and ensuring that everyone knows that they are made in the love of God, and they are accompanied by the church and by our faith institutions and traditions.
Julian, did you have anything else?
No, I think we just got a very good perspective on what's going on both sides of the border, which is always important. And yeah, I mean, things change with the stroke of a pen when when a president decided to change a policy he had for 3.5 years, and when another president decided to come in with his own policy. So we're just waiting to see what's going to happen in the future.
All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you. Julian Resendez, our El Paso correspondent, and joining us today, Assistant Director for Global Migration at the Hope Border Institute, Jesus de la Torre. We appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your time, and that's why we will be back in just 1 minute, so stay with us. Wednesday edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of Deep South Texas. Thank you again to Jesus de la Torre, Assistant Director for Global Migration at the Hope Border Institute, for joining us today. We really appreciate that, and we also appreciate the analysis from Julian, our El Paso correspondent. Now, speaking of correspondents, I wanted to get to our San Diego correspondent. Community leaders in San Diego toured an area where a boom was placed to stop the flow of trash that flows from the Tijuana River to the Pacific Ocean. It's something we've actually talked to you about before. Now, the question is, was this a success? Our Salvador Rivera has the story.
The trash boom did its job during the rainy season, stopping 500 tons of trash, keeping all these plastics and other debris from flowing into the Tijuana River Valley and out to the Pacific Ocean. All the materials came into the U.S. side of the border from the city of Tijuana.
500 tons is a drop in the bucket when you see the hundreds of dump sites on the Mexican side of the border.
Jennifer Hazard is the programs director for the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, one of the agencies involved with making the trash boom a reality.
Decades in the making. This is like something fantastic to celebrate for all the partners involved.
Hazard and other national members of the RCAP from as far away as Massachusetts, Ohio, and Missouri toured the site and learned about the boom, its capabilities, and where the trash comes from.
This is the city of Tijuana. This is the footprint of the city of Tijuana.
A project like this doesn't just happen overnight. This was like 2 decades in the making. And I hope they walk away with an important message that it's all about establishing partnerships, relationships that we built on both sides of the border over more than 2 decades.
The boom has been taken apart for the time being, but in a few months it will be reassembled and operational, ready for the next rainy season.
Our CAC was funded through the State Water Board, the California State Water Board, to have the booms, to manufacture the booms, deploy them, and operate them for 2 storm seasons. We were able to extend that into a 3rd storm season.
According to Hazard, others in the group are considering similar projects on waterways and rivers across the country.
When we have thriving rural communities that have clean drinking water, access to sanitation and solid waste services, it benefits the urban core as well.
Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
Also happening, the large migrant processing and detention facility under construction in Fort Bliss, Texas, will start will begin operations on August 17th. Border Report has learned that the ICE tent complex will be able to accommodate up to 1,000 people in immigration removal procedures, but as construction continues over the next 2 years, they're going to expand that to 5,000 beds, and the contractor is going to be adding more beds in increments of 250 a week until a capacity of 3,000 is reached, according to an email from ICE. They went on to say that ICE personnel will be responsible for the management and operational authority pertaining to what will be known as Camp East Montana. And that is going to do it for us today. If you'd like to see reporting from Julian or Salvador Rivera or our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez, or watch this episode, you can get more at borderreport.com. My name is Rudy. Have a good day.